And boom, and we're live. And welcome to another edition of Life is People. And well, tonight's guest is SatorID. Now, if anyone who's kind of followed our parts in the past, we've had some sort of conversation in various podcasts on the Minds panel and in dairy and stuff. So we've had our conversations before, but I think it's a fascinating time. So I thought, without further ado, really, I wanted to have a real sort of conversation. So I don't, the first sort of really sort of question I really want to ask you, Satori, is how did you where did this all start for you? I mean, I know you just started these, you got involved in Minds and you've been involved with doing your own podcast and stuff. Where did this whole journey start from you?
Um, that's kind of interesting, and I guess like with a lot of people, really the journey of me doing what I'm doing started kind of after uh, high school when I graduated. That summer, I I didn't, you're going to go to, I went to, going to college and kind of just like what I'm going to do with my life, who am I, and all this kind of stuff. And my friend gave me a lot of good books to read. Jack Kerouac, Hunter S. Thompson. Then I kind of went on from there. But Satori D comes from when I first read. It's called Satori in Paris by Jack Kerouac, and that was even before what I even knew what the term Satori meant. And I just loved the sound of it, and I was like, oh, that sounds cool. So fast forward to when I signed up on Minds. I had no idea what really Minds was about. I was just thinking about Facebook. So when I first signed up, I was like, well, let me don't use my name. Let me use something that means more to me right now. And I was like, well, Jack Kerouac has always been a big influence on me. Uh, so, and then I was like, okay, I use Satori and D for my first name, Daniel. And that's where Satori D came from. And from there, I just started expanding on it because, prior to this, I've always written. I always kind of done poetry. Always been doing like goofy films with my friends, like on the weekends. Just interested in art, like, but I didn't think I could do anything with it because like I didn't have a platform for my voice. Like I would use Facebook to write, and I mean I would like have to like force people to like read my friends that I hang out with all the time. They're like, I was like, come on, read this, read that, and then I'll get like crickets. And I'm like, I mean, I mostly wrote for myself, like whenever I was like, you know, whatever, like I needed to express something, but I didn't know how to put it down. So I would just like write, like, those things that like always kind of go back in your head, whatever it is. Maybe it's a good thing with, you find a girl or whatever, or a bad thing, like, you're struggling, like, why am I like messing up my relationships, or why am I like doing this or that, or I feel stuck at work. And I would just write poetry or write little things, and I just thought it was like a hobby or whatever. But when I got onto Minds and I had an audience, I'm the type of person to be like, okay, let's see how far I could take it. And I kept on building on it, and I kept on going with this whole Satori D thing and messing with images. Then I downloaded a program to video edit, and I don't even know how I got involved with podcasting. This is a guy from Minds. His name's Jaffrey Ryder, and he was doing podcasting. He was kind of like saying, "Hey, listen to the show," and I'm like, "Okay." A couple of times we just talked over, I think it was Skype, and we just had good conversations. And he's like, "You know what? Like, I want to do my own podcasting. Do you mind if I interview you?" And I was just like, "What?" I was like, but anytime I have this thing, like anytime I feel like nervous about something or hesitant, I say, you know what? Like, get over yourself and let's do it. Instead of like, oh, I'm not gonna do it. I like excuses. So I was like, you know what? Let's do the interview. I had no experience doing anything like that, and we had this like good conversation. I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. And he's like, hey, you want to be part of Pirate Radio? And I'm like, yeah, I guess so. And he's like, you think? Because by this time I was active on Minds, doing different stuff. He's like, you think you could get Bill or John on? And I'm like, Yeah, I talked to John kind of frequently. Like I could probably get them on, so I reached out to them, and it was pretty easy. And then from there, it just started expanding into the Minds Panel show, which is kind of based off of this one show that Bill did once. I think it was like 2 years ago or 3 years ago. He had a panel show on consciousness, and I thought it was just cool. So I kind of like mimicked him, I guess, in the beginning, and then it kind of spawned into his own thing, Infinite Imaginarium, Cryptohustle show, and then now uh, it's been a wild ride because the more and more I put myself out there, the more and more opportunities come back, and I just kind of seize the opportunities. I've been kind of involved with this new project. It's called Synereo, and it's also this kind of sister brother project called DivvyDao, which I think is really interesting. And we talked a little bit about it. We could talk later about it. But real basically, it's about giving. It's called DivvyDao, and it means to like divvy up resources and work, so we could all, it's like we're providing a toolkit, a decentralized toolkit for anybody to do whatever they want, and it's totally up to them. They make their own group, you have your own sovereignty, but we pull our resources together, because when you say you have something that's going to take 10 hours, if you have 10 people and you divvy it up an hour each, there you go, you get the project done. And that's kind of the basic philosophy of Divi. So it's been a wild ride, and I'm excited. I know there's still more to go on, and it's been great to meet people like you, Lee Travis, and all my Infinite Imaginarium people, which has been a really good thing.
Well, while we're on that, you know, on this, let's linger on it because I mean, you mentioned then about the Divi DAO. Now, you kind of gave a very kind of eloquent overview of it, but where further can people explore this? I mean, what's it based upon? Is this based upon blockchain technology? Is it based on? I mean, where is the root of this based upon? And equally, the second sort of supplementary questions actually, where do you sort of foresee this being built into? Is there any particular platforms or that excite you, where you think, oh, I know this could really flourish in that platform or this area or that area?
Yeah, so the DivvyDAO, right now, we're experimenting, right? We're using the framework of the DAO to we're using testnet, which is this kind of like what the name says is a testnet for to experiment on Ethereum. So we're using the DAO framework to experiment writing social contracts. And the main project that we have, you got to start small, is to develop uh, a strong, anonymous, secure identity. So this identity will be interoperable, meaning you could use it on any platform. It's your ID that you carry and along in the web, and you build your reputation, you build but you have control of your data. So like me and you working on a project, and I just give you information that is as much as I want, but you could have faith, because it gets verified off of the blockchain, that this is the actual person and not a robot. Or this guy, if I say that, oh, I have experience doing online communities, then you can verify that, oh, okay, he's done stuff with Minds.com, he's done stuff in Synereo, and he's done stuff with the DivvyDao, and vice versa. Like, you know, I say we never knew each other, and you said, oh, I work with stuff with the MadeSafe or N99, Life is People, this and that, and you know, I don't have to. It's a real quick exchange, like saying, oh, okay, this person is verified for doing that, and you build up your ID so that we could work together uh, the way we want to work with each other. Uh, so that's like the first part. So we could start building these contracts, and it's basically uh, we're a very small team. I'm kind of acting as What I do on Minds is that I help them with videos. I sit in on meetings, kind of think tank kind of stuff. I know I have a little bit of programming background, but I'm not the programmer or anything like that. But the guys that are involved have been in the industry for a while, and they kind of like one is retired, and his name's Jim, and he's really good. And his basic idea is that he wants to give a toolkit for he's seeing where the internet's going, and he wants to help empower individuals and communities uh, to uh, to do what they want to do, and he likes to say win-win situations. So if there's a matchup within this loose net group of communities and individuals, and for instance, I know you had the N99 project, and you go up there and you put your proposal. I have N99, and this is what I want to do with it. This is how much I have. I have my white paper. I have this and that, and people that are involved look at it and said, you know what, that's a really good project. I love that project. And this is, not only like funding, but like crowdsourcing resources. Hey, I'm really good at doing images. I could help you with images. Or I'm really good at recruiting people. I could help with recruiting people. I'm really good at programming. I could help. I know MadeSafe, or I know blockchain, or I know Scala, or whatever language it is. It says that, oh, or maybe you should talk to this guy because he's doing something that's pretty similar. Maybe there's a matchup, and it's up to the you and your group to make decisions. So anybody says, hey, I like this, I'm in, and as long as you have people to do that project, it gets done. And what DivvyDao does, hopefully, as we keep on progressing and getting more and more people involved, is that we help give people tools, like the ID tool. I know there's other stuff that they've been thinking about, helping facilitate social contracts. We have the concept of a divvy dollar, which is to represent cooperation. So you're like, okay, this guy on the network has done all these projects and he's been a stand-up guy. I could trust him to execute whatever he says he wants. This is like when we have a lot of people, and then you know it's totally up to the individual to make the rules, and we're just helping them to facilitate executing those rules. So it's basically and we have a couple of little mechanisms that we're kind of tweaking from the DAO that the DAO already has. For instance, they have this liquid democracy tool, and we want to use something similar to that. We also have this idea of having, let's say, a debate forum for when people want to really hash out their proposal. Say there's, kind of like an arbitrator slash mini courtroom thing. It's still evolving, but like if someone has a little bit of dispute and they want to really kind of like say their position, and you have the other person saying the position. At the same time, everybody who's involved is watching, and they vote on. We use this service called Consider It, and it has this really easy interface where you put proposals up, or you put whatever it is, and people vote on it, and they do pros and cons. So you have this feedback between the community and the people and there's a moderator, so it keeps it kind of like civil and gives people time. So I think that was kind of an interesting idea that someone has. So it's a place to experiment with us being governing ourselves in the way we want to do it, because we have all these tools. Now we just have to piece them together, and this is part of what DivvyDao wants to do, is that to provide tools that anybody could use. So like someone like you or me have a vision. For instance, there was this post on Minds, and it was about this co-op, um, like home gardening group. So I think the basic idea is that you kind of crop share. Like, say I grow tomatoes and someone else, because I live here in LA, so we don't have a huge backyard, but I grow tomatoes, someone grows onions, someone grows uh, herbs, and we're all part of the network, and we share. And he said, I don't know exactly how to do this, but he said he gave the basic design of it, and I was like, you know what? Because I've been in these meetings and we've been talking about, like, I think really easily, because he says he wants one thing to be like some kind of point system where everybody kind of shares it within the group. But later, if they want to sell uh, the harvest, the excess harvest to people at the farmers market, they could do that. But he's like, but he kind of wanted to keep it separate. I'm like, oh, you're talking about like a two token system. One is the token that only has value within your group. So it just represents time, effort that you have done to the community, and it's in exchange for the shares. Now you're then the other token is representing value that you're exchanging with outside the community. And it's important to kind of keep that separate because uh, when we talk about it, we weren't talking about it with the farming kind of stuff, but when we're talking about it for the actual DivvyDao as well, one of the concerns was that you don't want people, especially with a project like this, and this is what happened with the actual DAO. There's a big thing about it getting hacked, and even prior to that, they had a couple of issues, but people viewed it as a normal investment. They just put their money in there. Yeah, like these old way of thinking of investment. But the real power of the DAO was in not only having a crowd fund, but having people have a say. There was a voting mechanism that people weren't using to approve proposals, and so one of the guys, he made this point that he wants, like, it's fine if someone wants to just put in money or even get paid in just regular money, but he's like, he more wants to incentivize people that have a stake in the company or in this group, because he wants, like, one of them says, I want a DAO that lasts forever. I don't want one that just gets pumped with money and people leave it alone. Like, the real power of the DAO or the DivvyDao is in the collaboration, is in us creating win-win situations. Because there's a lot of people with a lot of ideas. There's a lot of problems that need solutions, and it's going to take uh, us working together. I think we're better when we work together to solve these problems. And there's a lot of, and I noticed this too in all the decentralized platforms. There's a lot of people having really great ideas, but they're a little bit scattered. Um, and I think if we could, and maybe it's not even the DivvyDAO, but this kind of concept of us realizing the 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 collective intelligence or the collaborative intelligence. This is something I've been kind of recently studied more on, and how, the old saying is great minds think alike, but great minds don't always think alike, but it's it's in how they work together, or when they learn together, because it's really cool to have difference of opinions, because you get an idea that you probably would have never thought before. And that's why I like having the forum of Infinite Imaginarium, because I mean, I have a couple of notes when we go into the show, but usually I just like to go with wherever the conversation goes. And I'm always surprised of what comes up. I'm even surprised too what sometimes I say, because I've never thought that way before. Or sometimes I express myself or an idea that I never came to before, and I think that's the magic of like what we have said when you've been on the show, is having people come together and just being able to talk openly and freely and playing off each other, that you get some really great stuff happening. And then so the other half of that is, okay, now we have all these great stuff. Let's see about implementing them and in the best way. So that's where I'm personally at, and that's why I'm excited about this new project, DivvyDao. And also too, I kind of mentioned it earlier because it was not on the DivvyDao is more like a community tool thing. So for instance, it started from Synereo, and Synereo is building a new blockchain for the first application they're going to build on is a social network, but they're kind of upgrading the blockchain in a sense, and it's like this crazy pi mathematics stuff. That's but anyways, they're using uh like stacks. So you have contracts within contracts within contracts, and they're trying to make it more dynamic than kind of like this linear process. And so, anyways, so as the scenario, this is how Jim, the main guy of DivvyDao, says, as Synereo looks in to build their platform, DivvyDao looks out of how we can empower communities to use this technology, because it's so new that a lot of people, uh, it's mostly what I see is the talk of the possibility of the blockchain, and that we're kind of like at this critical point to where we need to start working together to harness the power of all these new decentralized platforms, and hopefully with projects like the DivvyDao and maybe even other similar projects that I'm not aware of, that somehow we could start building that new story that we talked about on the Infinite Imaginarium. But anyways, in one of the Slack rooms, someone was saying that this platform that similar to what you were talking about, SoundCloud for artists, but it got bought by Microsoft or somebody, and they're like, oh, everybody's kind of bummed out on that. And it's like, I wish there was a platform that it was for artists and it's decentralized and this and that. I was like, oh, you're talking about my friend. He created this project called N99, and I gave him the website. He's like, oh shoot, yeah, this is exactly what I'm talking about. And then he's like, oh, made safe. He's like, maybe when Synereo's up, he could create a port and then this and that. And so the that idea that you have for N99 is powerful, and hopefully, you know, uh, that with a little bit more collaboration, we could do something where it's a win-win-win situation for everybody involved. Win for the artists, win to see your vision come up, and win for the different platforms that could be able to use your vision. And I think that's what the essence of DivvyDao is about, and that's why I'm excited to play my part in it. And that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Well, just on I deliberately do this. I pull this down to a very real everyday conversation. So right now, for anybody, let's use N99 as an example. Um, the people that if you're going to put a project up, what resources are they trading in at the moment? I mean, are they just trading in Bitcoin? Are they allowing other cryptocurrencies? If so, what's the extent of their range of cryptocurrencies? I mean, these are the very practical questions. So that, I mean, about going further. I mean, that's just that alone. I mean, what now if I was going to put a project up? What currencies would they accept, and how is the I mean, would they do time banking, for instance? Would they consider time as a resource to use? I mean, these are the very down to earth questions I'm asking. So I'd love to
Yeah.
hear an answer.
Um, for right now, and I know because Scenario is still in development, and I have heard that Scenario is going to be coin agnostic. They have their coins that are basically kind of similar to mine's. Their AMP helps you to get whatever your content out there in the social networking, and they have another coin that's called Rio, but it's not a coin to be traded. It's only a coin to represent your reputation of how you interact within the overall Synereo community networks of networks. But I believe they're going to have their wallets where you could use any coin. So it's so you could do transactions how you see fit and how you want. Now the DivvyDao for right now that it's fairly new, so we got to start simple and then scale up, and it's the same premise. Right now we are experimenting or testing out the Divi dollar, or I think it's going to call it Divi coin later, and so that represents your interactions within the Divi community, and it's supposed to represent your collaboration. Uh, but it's also tied to Ether, and that's the one you can exchange for value later for your, if you put in work, obviously, you should get paid for whatever work you do and whatever agreements you have within those projects. And so the Ether could be exchanged on the market for any coin, but I know later it's with the intention to be coin agnostic again, and it's up to each individual in their contracts to determine how their payments are going to be involved. And I believe there's a tool that they want to build of a timer in a sense, or some kind of thing where it's the option for you. I mean, of course, when you write your proposals, uh, there should be a deadline, right? Um, if you agree to do this program, there's probably a negotiation that happens before you're gonna write your contract with them. Um, how long is it gonna take? Well, I think it's gonna take this long. I was like, okay, you say 2 months, I'll give you 3 months, and it should be done by then. And so you have the agreed upon. And now if they don't execute that within that time, and this is kind of where the Divi dollar kind of plays in, you're not only don't you get paid, but you don't have that status of the Divi dollar. So you said, hey, this guy's been in the community for, and this is kind of this reputation thing, and also too with an ID to help verify different transactions. You're like, well, this guy's been on the network for a while, and why doesn't he have any Divi dollars? He's been part of these projects, and why hasn't he's accumulated this cooperation stuff? So that's kind of a sign for you to maybe, if he, and it's up to every individual to make up their own decision, but it's for people to really verify their reputation in a sense. So in the real world, people could have a fake um, resume. They could do all this kind of stuff, and yeah, if you live in a close community, then your reputation by word is around there, and then you have a kind of a sense of, okay, this guy's this, and two, when you meet them face to face, you get a sense of them. It's a little harder to get that sense over the internet. Yeah, I mean, you can have conversations and you can look into their stuff, but you, it's really hard to tell. Even in real life, it's really hard to tell. And this is just a tool. It's not going to like replace uh, actually having interactions, but it's a tool to help start the initial relationship with people. So you can have a little bit more trust. You can have a little bit more options of like, okay, this guy has worked on X amount of projects and has this kind of resume, and plus when we had a one-on-one conversation, he was cool. So yeah, I'm gonna green light him for my project, and let's get it done. But you know, it's also with the attention to those. I mean, everything are all tools, and it's up for every community to make the decisions on themselves. But we hopefully these tools could help facilitate collaboration, um, not take the place of the actual interactions, but to help facilitate that, because you know you got to be. There is a lot of great stuff happening on the internet, and a lot of hope and potential, but also too, especially in the cryptocurrency world and all these like fringe technologies, you got to watch out for scams or for people not being totally upfront, and the and that's a real concern. And I think with the ID that they want to develop, it could really help alleviate some of those concerns of especially for the average person. For the average person that doesn't know technology, that that but they have a great idea and they want to build something. Um, it's kind of my take that this ID could help give you confidence to hire somebody, and they have this kind of ID that verifies that they're saying what they say is actually true, and true because they have done it, kind of like that proof of work concept. So you don't have to you know have a master's degree in computer science to hopefully verify that this programmer knows what he's saying, but that his work speaks for himself, and you can verify it through his ID. And I think that's the idea, or my kind of take on it. So I mean, that's just one of the tools that they want to do, and it's also with the attention to being interoperable, meaning that uh, you don't have to have one platform. And I think too the whole like decentralized movement should be in principle decentralized, meaning that every group could kind of do their own thing, but also we're trying to make it connect to each other. So you could bounce from platform to platform using your ID, using these tools, and they should be able to work. And I mean that's going to be a challenge, but that's I think something to help everybody. Um, I think the more and more we work towards making things secure, um, to verify things, but also making them the term user friendly, making it for the so the average person could be empowered too with these tools is I know something that I personally like, and what I hear from the DivvyDao. So I mean, it's very in the beginning stages, but there's already a lot of stuff that we can do using the DAO framework and the Ethereum. So right now we're testing um, writing contracts. We're testing the two token system that we're developing and the ID, and we have to get those things right first. But you know, anybody could go to DivvyDao.org and check it out. We have it's called this living document, and so it's kind of like this really rough um, document of all the possibilities that we see so far. And anybody who gets involved could go. You could register. We have a forum for membership, and so right now, the first project on the DivvyDao is to get the DivvyDao up. And so, like, my role is to help do video edits, be there in think tanks to help go to communities and and get people to come together to build. And like for instance, one of our programmers, he said, "I think I tested almost everything that has came out in the past like 18 years." So he wants to pick the best tools that are available to help facilitate people, but is also too about that it should always be evolving. That not everybody, and so the liquid democracy tool is that you kind of spread out the consensus and the voting, so not everybody votes on everything, but the right people should be voting on certain things. So all the tech experts should be voting on the tools that we use. The people that are more community organizers should be voting on proposals of, but all of these are tools and suggestions to help empower people. But it's kind of with the idea too that you have the autonomy and sovereignty to make your community the way you want it, and only work with people that you want to and your interactions. But so it's an experiment, a social experiment. But we also know that you have to start peer to peer, community to community, and with the basics first, and then is with the intention to scale up. But yeah, that's where we are with that.
Well, well, on the very point where we are right now, where we stand in 2016, and I'll sort of, play sort of maybe devil's advocate on this. I mean, I can see the attraction of the DivvyDao for creative people or people who have visions. So I can imagine this is the scenario I'm going to put to you. What happens if it just gets completely overwhelmed with people saying, "Oh, I want this project, I want that project, I want this," and because that's a very human trait. You can see that in amongst the human species. Everybody has always got an idea. They want something. So my question to you really, from the angle is, okay, so maybe I'm a programmer, and I think, okay, I see plenty of wants out there. Everybody wants this built, that built, everything else. What am I going to get as a programmer to say, okay, why should I give up my 9 to 5 rat race job that pays me securely every month to go and build a project that I don't know, okay, I can understand how the social contracts are enforced by the respect, the status and stuff. That's perfect, but I've still got to at some point give up a day job or a job that's going to pay me a monthly contract to go and jump into a world where, okay, I can see loads of wants and needs, but how do I know? How can I trust those people that they may have a load of visions, but I need to know that they're actually going to fulfill me and pay my bills, because everyone has to pay their rent or their mortgage or X one. We've all got to live on this rock. So playing devil's advocate, what would your response be to a programmer who says, okay, I like this idea, but I need to know that, when I step into a contract with somebody who wants to build something, that I'm going to get rewarded as a programmer. So I'm not just wasting all my time and energy for 3 months building something, and the person says, oh, by the way, I haven't got any resources to pay you. So how have you approached that?
Yeah, and so that comes into for every so it's basically up to the individual to make those decisions. But what does happen, and what hopefully the tools that we could give people is first is that when you're writing these contracts that you have in there, I'm gonna get paid X amount for doing this upon completion, and with the verification tools that you can verify that there is funds for this project. So when you agree to say take up the task of writing the code for it, and it's probably going to be broken up. Like the programmer is going to write the code for the search function for whatever your project is. Okay, I could do that in 3 weeks, but my rate is it's like $1,000 a week or whatever it is, and the person who you're gonna have it's gonna be um, broken up. One of the tools is to be broken up with the liquid democracy. So you have weak consensus of. So first, you verify that there is funds for this project. So you, the individual, have the ability to verify that this project has funding. So you're more inclined to say, hey, I'm going to work with these guys because they have the backing of whatever money they have. And then, so the next step is to build that contract. So whatever you guys agree upon, but there should be a time limit, right? Okay, you said it's going to be three weeks to do this project. We're going to agree upon 4 weeks. Now, if it doesn't get set, you write this in your contract, then the money doesn't come out and you don't get those divvy dollars. But the divvy dollars are also supposed to represent that this guy, or even the people running the proposal, have had a reputation of working well with each other and living up to the contracts. So the more divvy dollars that you have, the more representation that you are someone that when you write a contract, it gets done. When you agree upon something, you follow through. You're able to be work. You're someone that I could work with because you have done it in the past, and that's what the Divi dollar represents. That you have cooperated, you have followed through with your contracts. So before you even get to talk to that person, you say, hey, this guy has done, he has X amount of Divi dollars. He's followed through on his contracts. So I'm more inclined to work for him. Now, you do have to give people a chance when they first start, right? But that's where the verification of funds, verification that this is the actual person, this guy has actually written his white paper or whatever it is. But as you go along, hopefully, if people are not fulfilling their role of backing, not fulfilling contracts, putting up proposals that never get worked on, that you could kind of, for each individual, you could the tool of the Divi dollar is to represent that, okay, I'm less inclined to work for this person because he has not fulfilled. He's been on the Divi community, but he has no Divi dollars. He has his name on 100 proposals, but why doesn't he have Divi dollars? So you're gonna be like, well, that kind of means, one, his proposals never get uh, fulfilled. He's probably hasn't been able to back up his contracts. So you at least for each individual, you have that power to be like, well, I don't know. There's two projects of the same type of thing, but one person has a reputation with his Divi dollars, and I like his credentials or whatever. So he says that this guy has executed his contracts. I'm more inclined to go for this guy because now I have something real quick that could gives me confidence that not only you are going to be able to verify that there are funds for the proposal. That's first, um, but also two, you can verify that this person has worked on projects in a collaborative way, because what the Divi dollar represents is collaboration. So I'm more inclined to trust the guy that has done it before, and I have somewhat of an inkling that, hey, if I go into a contract with him, it's going to be fulfilled. Now, if it doesn't get fulfilled, that's going to be represented as that he didn't fulfill this contract. So later, you have that kind of ledger of cooperation that you could verify later. Okay, he has executed 90% of his collaborations and contracts, so that's still good. I could work with him because sometimes stuff happens. But if you have someone that has all these proposals that has never executed on contracts or never followed through, uh, you know, you would still be able to work with him, but at least you have some. We're giving some that tool of cooperation to people to make a little bit of a smarter decision when they're going into contracts, because it is tough out there. The reality of the world. Um, you know, so it's these are all tools to help hopefully maximize collaboration and to incentivize people following through with their contracts, um, and 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 working on stuff that they could fulfill. But it's just a tool, and but hopefully it's with the intention to help push what we desperately need. I think we desperately need to start working together to solve problems, to do um, great things that are right here with us. There's a lot of tools available, and hopefully this can help facilitate that.
Well, I mean, on that very thought, and I mean, just say, back to you. Has there been any proposals put up or any thoughts given about making this not just an English spoken? Because I'd imagine now, if I went on to it, maybe there'd be English. Oh, that's the question I had to you. What languages is the DivvyDao open up to the moment? Is it just in English? Is it into Spanish? Is it into Cantonese, Hindi? I mean, what? And because I think this is one of the things we need to, like you said, to really open this up. It's a case of opening up to everyone. And I know it's difficult, but we have the tools available. So I was wondering, what's the thought proposals around trying to get this out into every language? Because there are people who can do programming in all corners of the world, not just in one part of the world or another part of the world. Do you understand what I'm saying?
That is very interesting, and it's something that we haven't necessarily talked about yet. But so it's for real specifically, it's in English, and that's just by virtue because people that are involved with it are mainly here in the States that speak English. But I could see exactly a project like that of a translator. Um, for instance, there are already kind of tools, and we kind of talk about this on Minds, that Minds kind of needs a translator for text or something, and there's an audio translator as well, like you speak and then it translates it to the language. Now I don't know how great they work, but at least that's a start to bridging some of these gaps. That I could see someone writing a proposal on, and so I put it in our chat too. We have it's called Divi Considerate. So right now we have collaboration tools we want to use. So they have Divi Considerate for making proposals, which we're already doing. A chat server for free and open uncensored discussion, which we use. Deadline for payments or period in order to deliver on commitments for cooperation. So this is kind of this mechanism that you were kind of mentioning about a timer or a deadline for payment so they get paid out. Then they're doing Taiga for task support. So it's kind of like a collaboration tool. And then these are projects we want to work on that are we already kind of started, and these are just kind of basics stuff, like a Divi blog, which we have up, community token, which I believe we have and we're experimenting with on the test network. We have a spreadsheet right now that we're keeping track of our payments in Divi dollars. Audio and video debates, proposals for group decisions. That's that kind of debate thing that we have, and we're almost there with that one. The OpenID log is something that may take a little longer. The liquid democracy. Then we have like private keys. So, anyways, it's with so somebody could go who's a part of this and say on consider it. Okay, say we have the ID ready and we have the debate system up. We said, you know what? Let's open this up to more people. Like, we're kind of only narrowing ourselves if we only have an English-speaking market. How about I have interests with somebody in the Chinese market or in Korea or South America, that maybe let's devise a tool for a translator. A text translator probably would be the easiest one to implement. So you put it on Consider It, people vote on that proposal, and whoever voted on that proposal means they're going to help execute that. And then you set up a parameter, like we need to execute this by set date, and then you get it done. So all those, and this is I think the power or kind of cool thing about it is that if it's a good idea and it's worded pretty good, I have the kind of the belief, and you could say, hey, this has value because this is going to do this and that. People are going to be like, hey, that's a good proposal. I kind of know of a translator program that maybe we could modify and we could use it for this purpose. And then you said, okay, we need to talk to this person, and then they said, you know what, that's pretty easy, or that's going to be hard, so it's going to be a 6 months project or whatever. and then you start formulating your proposal, and then if you get enough people, then that's the approval process for getting a project done, is that there's enough people to execute it, and then it's up for those people that voted on it to do the proposal, and then that's how you get represented for your cooperation, is by, one, you said you're in for the proposal. Now you verify it by, did that proposal get done, and then you get the divvy dollars. So it's so I could see that possibility happen. It's not something that's being proposed right now, but I think it would be a powerful tool to start bridging these gaps, to say opening it up to South America, opening it up to wherever. Actually, I oh yeah, okay. I had a question.
Yeah, SatorID.
Hey.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you. You know the DAO thing, right?
Hmm?
It, like what happened with the DAO?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is your DAO like uh was it are there things to do to fix the DAO?
Yes.
So
So
yeah, so your DAO is not hurt.
yeah. So for
Oh, great.
instance, um, we're using the DAO framework, and so the basic outline of the DAO to do our first experimentations with this, but we're taking out the split. The split is what
Oh,
made it
great.
able for the guy to extract the funds. So what happened was that he built another DAO, what's called like a child DAO or a clone DAO, and when you split, there's this grace period where they can't verify the funds, and so he just started taking out money without it being checked, right? And so that's why he was able to get the $50 million. But yeah, we're not having that split in it.
Yeah,
But it's
that's
also,
great.
yeah, but it's also with the intention to for us to use Synereo, and the way Synereo sets up their blockchain, and with their programming, that that um, exploit would never get compiled on Synereo. So yeah, we're taking
Oh,
precautions on
awesome.
that and learning from mistakes for sure.
Yeah, great work. I listened throughout. It's very cool things you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. But yeah, that is a big concern. But I think too, like what we were kind of mentioning earlier, the DAO was a pretty big experiment, and that
Would you trust? Would you? I wanted to get your opinion, but I don't know if you wanted to share your opinion. But my question would be, would you trust those individuals with with like? Remember you were discussing about the, I guess it's called DivvyDao, right? Like divvy out, right? Kind of like divvying out. So like, and you use a reputation system, how would you be qualifying the founders of the the DAO? You know, like if
uh,
you wanted to share your opinion, I'd be interested in hearing about
yeah,
it.
that is actually a really good question. And so now it's, in one respect, it's hard to, let's say, judge them because nothing like the DAO has ever been done before. And I think in a lot of sense, there was a little bit of, and I know for sure because we had one of the guys from Slockit on our meeting, and he said they never expected for $150 million to be invested into the DAO when it first started up. So in a sense, I think they got a little bit, you know, they bit off more than they could chew in that sense. They thought, oh, okay, we're just gonna have this kind of like test run with just community funds that maybe we'll raise $5 million. But I think part of it is that hopefully, and this is where I'm going to kind of reserve my judgment, because it's still to be seen if they could recover from this. Now, if you know a little bit of the history of Bitcoin, Bitcoin had had this issue, had an issue similar, not exactly what they're doing, but they recovered from it and they learned from it, the Mt. Gox, and they were able to survive. Now they're in a real critical situation here, and I don't know them like personally, but I know the Synereo team, and they work with people from the DAO, and they have confidence in them. So by that, but I'm still skeptical, and there should be scrutiny of what's going to happen. But I am at least going to give them, because one, they're going to return the funds for that money that are, because they put a block in it so the guy can't extract his things. I believe soft fork is going to happen, so people could get their money back. And now that's fine and everything, but I want to see what they do from there. Now, if they don't correct their error and stuff like that, then I would say that's when I'll say that I will give them not that many divvy dollars. Or like I would be hesitant to work with them in a capacity to write my own contracts if I want to use their platform, for sure.
Yeah, like if I may, I wanted to share my opinion on what happened. Was like in Bitcoin when Mt. Gox happened, it's a far bigger amount of money that was lost, and there was no fork, no. Well, I don't know if people consider forking Bitcoin, but I doubt it. And there's, in my opinion, there's now this air of centralization around Ethereum, which was not the original message that Ethereum was kind of standing for. So there's now like an inconsistency in the Ethereum kind of realm. And I felt that they should have, because they don't know who the attacker really is, they don't know, like, what if that quote-unquote attacker is benevolent and might have done a different job than the original curators of the DAO, and what if, like, and then the war against this potentially benevolent person who simply used the contract as is now, there's a whole fiasco built versus just letting the ball play where it lies.
Yeah, that is it's for sure sets kind of a bad precedent.
Yeah.
And this is something hopefully gets talked about a lot, because what you were saying is true. It's supposed to be this kind of like autonomous, a decentralized organization, but now with what's happening, you see kind of like a centralized entity making decisions, right? The developers and the foundation are making kind of the decision. Yeah, the vote is up to the miners, but you seen the initial reaction is that it got centralized. And I think what's important is that whatever comes after, and this is in a lot of sense kind of the thing, right? there's an evolutionary process that happens with technology, and it kind of was bad that it happened on this kind of like stage as it did. But the what Synereo's trying to do is that they say that they want to put into the equation of human beings, so that not only you have this computer that's organizing stuff for you, but ultimately it comes down to us. The humans are the agents of this platform, and that it's very hard to even predict what a program is going to do, much less humans. And you have to put that into the equation. So I mean, I think it's really, I think this is a really good critical point for everybody in the decentralized area, or even just humanity at large, is that okay? We hit this kind of wall, but can we learn from this? Sometimes we don't learn from it, and it's a real shame. But when we do, I think that's when we take the evolutionary step, which I think we need to do. So
SatorID, I wanted to point out that contrary to Ethereum, Synereo upfront discloses that it's about the people and not about just this automatic network. Synereo is an automatic network of people's decisions. So you're upfront about the group participation, whereas in an Ethereum scenario, not like situation, they are violating or in my opinion, it's a violation of their description of the service that they were presenting. They went from decentralized to now like authoritarian, whereas Synereo, from your description, is distinct because you give a clear representation that it's about group decisions, right?
Yeah, and the kind of like what they use is it's your network, your rules. So actually we have Jim here, who's actually the better person to answer more specific questions on Synereo and the DivvyDao. Hey Jim, how are you?
Hi, sorry, I didn't catch all of the show. I was trying to listen to some interruptions as usual.
Yeah.
There were some questions. I was kind of eager to answer them now. If I can't think of what they are,
but I guess basically right now the question is about Synereo and how it could prevent what happened with the DAO, and how Synereo puts into the equation the human agent for how we do contracts.
Well, first of all, Synereo is a human system. Okay, they have what's called social contracts, and it's really, what they say about the smart contracts on the blockchain is they're not smart and they're not contracts. Okay, they're essentially traditional programs developed that run in a decentralized distributed network, and programmers don't know how to generally how to deal with the programs in a functional manner on a distributed network. And Synereo uses a process calculus based on Milner's pi calculus, which is a row calculus for mobile asynchronous communicating processes. And that's what we're dealing with here. And so they use a mathematics that's tailored exactly for what we're doing. And they use what's called a behavioral typing system, so that you define the social graces you expect in a contract or a relationship. And if it's not agreed to by the participants, okay, the contract can't be compiled. It can't be executed. Um, if you have a requirement, for example, that, as you often do, that there's no deadlock situation, you develop your behavioral types such that they define that a deadlock situation can't come up, and the contracts won't compile in that case. Or what are some other good examples? Um, I mean, very simply, let's say I send you something, and I send it to you privately. Okay, if you go to forward it or send it, it'll warn you you're not allowed to. Okay, so it builds in my rules to my stuff, and I own all my stuff. Um, I may say you can copy it, but don't use my name. Don't quote me. Okay, I can. Um, uh, I can define a complex business process, or voting process, or organizational process. Okay, it does process orchestration. Um, uh, Whereas what they call smart contracts are really just traditional programs that run on the blockchain, pretty much.
So
Does that answer your question?
your version of this gives you more like you are the owner of that contract, or you dictate the terms.
Right, and then within communities, okay, we share contracts. It's and between communities. Okay, so we have a compatible organization, and they develop a range voting system. Well, we can combine range voting with our pool voting and liquid democracy aspects with this range voting component that they developed. And the other thing about Synereo contracts is that they're composable, so that you can build contracts on top of each other. Now, doing this on Ethereum, we have to follow certain standards. We have to make sure our communities are compatible, and our system, or have some kind of interoperability through some kind of gateway in order for us to interact among our communities, which is our objective. Does that answer it?
Yes, it's very fascinating.
Now, one of the questions I have to ask you, Jim, and maybe SatorID as well. You mentioned that, Jim, when you first came in, that you based this a lot around, or there was an element of this around pi, of mathematics. Now, my question to you is, what insights did you gain from the mathematical insights of pi in relation to this whole conversation about social contracts and smart contracts?
It's just the Greek letter pi. It has nothing to do with the value pi. Pi is an interesting subject, but it doesn't apply here. I don't think. It would be interesting. I'm sure there must be some kind of convoluted connection we could make, but it's
And on a more practical level, we were discussing this in the conversation earlier on. I mean, I've kind of sort of probed about what resources are available to use both sides. Now, one of the things that obviously we had this discussion about, we can reinforce smart contracts and this with digital content. How any thoughts just from anyone really? How do we take this from being enforceable on a digital platform to, okay, can we enforce things like actual practical hand-built things, and expand this out to a wider aspect of humanity? Has this sort of crossed
Nope.
your mind? Is it something you've all discussed? I mean, what's your insights
Oh,
on that?
well, when I started building group systems back in 1974, Murray Toroff, EFF pioneer, um, gave us the first mandate: never create anything you can't destroy. Which, is pretty much the sentiment of the of the Synereo and Divi community, which is very different from the Bitcoin aspect. Is we're building human systems, and we will never ever uh, allow humanity to be controlled by computer. Okay, we always have a human a mechanism for human intervention, so to speak. And even in the DAO contract, they have had a mechanism to replace the contract, but it takes 21 days. So when they discovered the bug, 3 days before the exploit, there was nothing they could do. They didn't have any way to react quickly to the bug, and it was the bug fix was the bug discussion and fix was all public, so anybody I mean, actually, the way that they exploited that bug was really, really tricky. I mean, by the time you get to the end of the process, you've forgotten the beginning of it. They had to go through a lot of steps and get timing. They had to catch things just at the right time, because what would happen is the contract would recursively call itself, but the contract had functions that changed its state, and by making a recursive call to the contract to change its state and then doing an operation, and if the timing was just right, if they caught it in between states, they could basically collect their rewards again and again and again. In other words, when you do a split, you take your rewards with you.
I think the possibility was you can perform a split and then ask for the money from that split about 20 times before it gets confirmed. And before it's confirmed, you can also send back your DAO tokens to yourself. And then with those same DAO tokens, repeat the process, where you can now use those DAO tokens you sent back, perform another split, hit the button 20 times, and then send the DAO back to yourself again. It gets confirmed, DAO comes back to you, and you hit the split, collect the reward 20 times, send back the DAO, and then maybe you missed the button and they took your DAO tokens finally. But potentially, you probably could have produced more Ethereum than is possible. I felt that kind of situation would trigger a reality for a hard fork, where really it's kind of like a Bitcoin situation where someone made like 90 million or like 186 billion Bitcoins through some bug. But in this case, it's kind of a bug, but it didn't really overflow. But like it didn't overflow maximum amount of coins. So like I mentioned earlier, my opinion was that maybe the attacker wasn't just perfectly self-interested, and they might have been benevolent and they just wanted to put funds into their DAO, into their split. And what if they were going to fund the most important projects of humanity from that fund? And we're never going to know that anymore.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty close. I mean, there were a couple of other tricky things in there that.
Mm.
Um,
But also, it's not the only contract, because then the blog post from Ethereum was about contract security, and there was 10 other different examples of contracts that were exploitable for 10,000 Ethereum or 20,000 Ethereum. And if someone didn't have anything else to do, they can spend all their time exploiting Ethereum contracts for profit. I mean, for me, this was kind of amazing because of how much monetary value is embedded in that platform, while it's like it's still a frontier. So
that's very punny.
yeah.
Yeah, the uh, it is it is brand new, and um, uh, obviously they missed the issues that they did do 6 months of testing, and they cleared out a lot of bugs, and they did go through a security audit, and missed the bug, but the uh, the you know I don't blame the team at all, because I've been um, in the uh, software development space for 50 years, and no program's perfect, and uh, it takes a long time to vet a piece of software and get all the bugs out. Uh, Generally, even the most closely scrutinized programs can turn out to have bugs in them, and it's we can't expect that we can never be sure that there's no bugs in a program. Okay, what we can be sure of is that we have a recovery mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
And in a sense, the DAO did have a recovery mechanism, because of the delay, and then being able to take the funds out. There is time to fix the problem. The problem becomes, how do they fix the problem without creating another problem? And it's not clear to me that they figured that out yet. I think the soft fork was voted. Everybody wanted to do the soft fork, and then this guy who's well known, I can't think of his name right now, found a problem with with a denial of service attack that could basically bring down
Right.
the whole Ethernet, and so now the miners have voted against it, the soft fork, and has there been another proposed solution? I may not be up to date, but I haven't heard of it yet.
I'm not sure where things stand anymore. And you're right. It's quite wise words when you say in software development, even the most scrutinized code will have something. And I get the feeling like while very smart people work on things, you never know when someone clever in a certain way will pay attention to what you've done and see something you didn't, because you weren't thinking that way, and someone clever or clever in that moment for that thing, they discover something, right? So, like,
Yeah.
even
And
Bitcoin had an issue with multiplying a lot of coins, and I guess, and Bitcoin has its problems too that are not obvious to everybody all the time.
and they had their forks in the beginning too. I mean,
Yeah,
there were
exactly. That's what I
problems.
was referring to. Yeah, and now after this, I realize the the position of the Bitcoin developers, where they were refusing to raise the block size, for example, and they stay very extraordinarily conservative, like monks safeguarding some relic, you know? And I start to appreciate that that's what has been the case. And, at least something is going to be steadfast. At least Bitcoin could remain unchanged. But,
Well, the blockchain evolution will continue.
oh yeah,
They're going to increase the block size or whatever, and they'll make but clearly the Bitcoin is not scalable and it wastes a lot of electricity, which is why the Casper protocol is so exciting. Um, Again, using the process calculus in order to make attractors for consensus um, uh, in a proof of stake. But the stake is that uh, um, if there's bets on the correct answer, and if it's proven wrong or it's turns out to be wrong, then they the money. But uh, uh, in the Divi, we're using uh, a more uh, a proof of cooperation, which is um, more human oriented than machine oriented. But it's based on trust, human trust, and it's based on um, the fact that you can't always get global consensus. If we're in a contract, the only people that need consensus is you and I, okay, and maybe an arbitration mechanism or person that's assigned to the contract. You don't need anyone else. You don't need anyone else involved in that. And uh, uh, so uh, uh, it turns out the cases are very rare that you would get a double spend uh, um, type of situation, and um, those can be mediated and handled, okay, um, uh, not in an arbitrary way like Bitcoin. It's like, you know, who get, who, whether the transaction A was before B or after B on Bitcoin is a matter of luck, and computing power. Okay, which order it is, whether it's A first or B first, depends on who guessed the right hash for the block. Who made a better guess for the hash of the block? okay, which has nothing to do with whether transaction A was really before B or after B. So with the Casper, the first thing you do is they objectively determine which one came first in sort of a proof of ordering, and then they resort to the betting only if it can't be proven and if there's a conflict, only if there's a double spend type of situation. Then it goes to to the proof of stake. But the fact is that even with this proof of proof, well, proof of proof is where we're going with Synereo. Basically, the Synereo network becomes a giant row calculus machine, which is an intelligent machine, a rule-based machine that we all share on a level playing field. And everything is formally mathematically verifiable, so that ultimately we can burn the electricity with proofs of real problems rather than just burning it for no purpose. So we're moving from the direction of proof of work to proof of proof.
The Ethereum
so
token is going to be required to participate in a proof of stake.
Ethereum 2 is going to do the basic proof of stake. Okay, Synereo is using its own method, using composable blockchains. Okay, whereas Ethereum 2, the plan is right now they're just going to have one level of sharding of the blockchain. They both would employ the Casper protocol, but which is written in the row calculus, working with Synereo on that.
Oh, very interesting.
Sorry, I thought I had my head. I had off earlier.
Hello, Tim?
Sorry, Jim. I was just going to say, while you're on this very subject, just on a very layman terms, what does Casper stand for, and what does it actually mean on a practical level?
I forget. I'm sorry. It has something to do with a ghost protocol, I believe, that someone else did, or something. We'll have to ask Greg that next on Wednesday.
No, that's okay. And the other question that's always comes up when I have these discussions is, where do you sort of see this in progressing in terms of I think one of the downsides, or one of the failings of the blockchains at this moment is the time delay, and it's something you were alluding to when you were just speaking then. And how do you see progressing into that, where these can become instant, so it becomes almost like a live database, as compared to at the moment where we've got delays of a minute, if you're, or what's the sort of process and insights into that? How are you approaching that?
Well, the Ethereum 2 Casper protocol will scale to many thousands of transactions a second. Okay, it's a lot different from Bitcoin. The Synereo blockchain will scale to millions of blockchains. It's unlimited. It's fractal.
Okay, fantastic. So, I mean, so in relation to kind of going really back to what we were speaking about, Satori. I mean, right now is, you mentioned where people can go to, obviously, to reach out to DivvyDao and stuff like this. I mean, are there any plans to link this up with what's going on with mines? And there was sort of related questions to this at all, and coming from a completely non-programming point of view, how does this all relate to open source? Because as I understand it, open source means you can almost, in a very layman's terms, cut and paste what's already been put out in the open source market. So from a very perspective of someone who's not a programmer, does this mean that as we progress into the future that these should become more and more simple because all the ground programs have already been written, so we don't have to go back and rewrite everything else? It's almost like from an artistic point of view, now there's the I've drawn a picture and it's already been printed out, so I'm going to sit there and draw the individual hand drawing again. Is that going to progress into the future, or are there always going to be inherent barriers against using one platform to another? Because this is something you spoke about earlier on, Satori, about trying to cross-pollinate these ideas so they're not just stuck in little boxes. And so I'd love to have your insight on that, Jim, and maybe your insight, but all three of you really, because you all
I think
approach this from different angles.
Developing software in an evolutionary manner is something that is usually not done, and it takes thought and foresight. And speaking of open source, okay, most of there is source code we can copy and paste for just about everything that the Divi wants to do. Okay, the thing is making it interoperable. That's the challenge here. Now, Synereo is addressing that problem in the longer term by being completely composable, so that it's like Lego blocks. Okay, you can take any contracts or programs and put them together any way you want. And in fact, that's exactly what it does. If we have an interaction, it takes your contracts and my contracts, and it does, in essence, an intersection of the two, to find out whether we can even talk to each other. Okay, before before we even start, and it actually creates a contract for us. And if there's a larger group, it builds a contract for that group. Okay, it's composing, all of the processes together. I'm breaking up.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit there, Jim. You always have this problem with Google Hangouts. But I guess from my perspective, where I see my role in a sense, and I think this is where the Infinite Imaginarium kind of comes in, and I see my role as hopefully tapping into this collaborative intelligence of thinking with people who think differently, and that there's this intelligence not only that we could access the full range of intelligence between us, within us, those ideas that happen when we have a group of different people who think differently, like what we just have right now, to try to help facilitate and harness that. And briefly for people, I know Tim knows, but people that don't know about the Infinite Imaginarium, quite simply, the Infinite Imaginarium is a place where you could dream up the new future, and it's with the intention to bring it back, so then you can start building it and manifesting it into reality. But I see me helping to bridge this gap between the Synereo and DivvyDao community and the Minds community, and creating a situation where we have win-win situations, because we have a good group of community on Minds that are probably really receptive to what's going on in Synereo and the DivvyDao. For instance, actually, tomorrow at 11, Jim, we have the meeting for the DivvyDao?
It's
Well,
10
11 my
o'clock
time. 10
Eastern
o'clock?
Daylight Time.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, we have the community meeting, and I'm going to bring in Holly and Gov Spiders, and maybe even Lee's going to come into that meeting. Also, too, this happens every Tuesday, so Tim, I would like you to maybe jump into one of those, and it's just a community meeting. You could bring up your N99 project and see if there's something um, of maybe you just keep tabs on what we're doing. But it'd be interesting, and this is kind of what this meeting is about, is to bring different communities in together and see um, how we could help each other, how we could work this collaborative intelligence. And this is something that I find fascinating, and I'm kind of digging into myself. And that's the take or perspective that I take with everything that's happening. Um, and yeah, Jim.
Daniel has set up the Divi community on Minds, and I haven't spent much time there. I've been involved in other things, but I just had a complaint from one of our community members about Slack, and I mentioned that we were on Minds, and he was saying, "Oh yeah, you're on Minds," and so we're going to be looking into the communication tools that we use, and hopefully we'll take better advantage of Minds. Uh, uh, while and hopefully integrate Minds into Synereo at some point
Yeah,
next year when it's ready.
and I've actually just recently set up the DivvyDao. It's called Divi Community at Divi Community on Minds, because we've been talking about it, and especially on the Infinite Imaginarium, and I mentioned it a little bit on the Minds panel show. So people on Minds who hear that, they instantly say, "Oh, let me go look it up," and they look it up on Minds, and they don't find it. So it's with the intention to kind of have like this port. But yes, I know for a fact that Bill, the CEO of Minds, we had a show basically on decentralizing the internet, and he said he's open, like he sees no one in the open source decentralized world as a competitor, but as someone that they could work with and hopefully build relationships, and that there is when I think the timing is right, and I was kind of hoping that I could catch Bill when Greg came on the Infinite Imaginarium. That would have been nice to at least make that initial connection. But I know later as we move on, we'll have another opportunity with that. But there's definitely, I know within my immediate circle, people that are interested, and that we could start to maybe have these collaborations happening. So that's something that I'm pretty active member on Minds, and like yesterday we had a whole show just on Minds features, and actually we were talking about the voting mechanism. So that's why I took the initiative to do the site, so I could help use that platform, because it's small. I mean, it's small in comparison to Facebook. Almost every social network is small compared to Facebook, but there's it's a good market to tap into, people that are good beta testers, and people that are not afraid to speak their minds and think critically, and also to, I mean, people that I run with are pretty much good as far as communicating and even having the sense of working collaboratively. And I think that hopefully there's win-win situations, and I'm almost positive that we could start building that.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in and mention that I think that on the question that Tim asked was regarding the open source, and is it gonna lower the barriers? And and my perception is you're always gonna need some engineering or some person who has experience with engineering to combine some system. That's just my opinion, that the software engineer is not going to disappear. Where even though the tools become available where you can, like Lego block, for example, contracts and things, but there's always some kind of customization or expansion, some kind of accommodation someone always will want or feel that they need. And for that, there's always going to be the requirement for someone with a little discipline in telling the computer in text what it should do to facilitate that desire of a person.
I wouldn't say
Well,
always,
Yeah.
but to that, because eventually you will be able to tell the computer what you want, and that will be in fact writing the program if you can define it well enough.
Well,
Anyway,
well,
the
that way you
computer.
still need the engineering discipline to define it to the computer, right?
Well, you have the computer becomes an expert system
Hmm.
in engineering discipline, and in fact, it's being used more and more in engineering. But
Yeah, I kind of get that feeling when, for example, when I use Rust, I can I can make a structure with fields, and then I can read a JSON information, and it just goes right into the fields. And it's like miraculous. One line populates the structure with the data.
yeah, well, I mean, there's the tools. I don't know if they're getting better. Certainly, Java was a step backward in my view. Uh, and the last 5 years before the last 10 years before I retired, I think I did mostly Java programming. But I never did like it. But yeah, I mean, for something like Java, I mean, you need somebody who can type really fast and generate a lot of code, and every time you change something, you've got to change it all over the place, unless it's well designed.
It's kind of like a Django Python
Yeah, it could be, but
for websites, model view controller. Yeah, anyway.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the object model helps, obviously, clearly, but you need pure objects to make it really useful. Um, the the composability of the row calculus is significantly different from traditional software, and it does involve a very large learning curve to uh, to program components. But putting the components together is very safe. It's something it is well designed to do. And my example of putting together the contracts that we all have in order for us to interact is an example of that. It's all done automatically. Um, they're all interoperable by their formal mathematical nature.
Right.
It's you're not telling the computer what steps to perform. You're defining functionally the behavior that you want. So it's sort of an opposite perspective from normal programming. It's more declarative than it is procedural.
I can imagine that it's gonna work, that it works, and that it's gonna work. Though, yeah, I'm gonna get to sleep now, and just wanted to say, very nice to hear about the things you guys are doing, and thanks to Tim for letting me come on. And yeah, Satori, that's really cool. All the things you're doing, and Jim, you sound like a very very smart man. So I'm very, glad to been able to speak with you. So, on
I've
that
been
note,
I've been around the block a few times.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, it was nice to meet you.
Yes.
Definitely keep in touch and you know
yeah.
visit the site. And I don't know, are you on Minds at all or no?
No, no, but I'm familiar with Synereo,
Oh,
and
okay, cool.
yeah, like, yeah, I mean, familiar in terms of I know that it's in the public, so there's no doubt in my mind that I'll see what you guys are up to and probably participate in some things that you guys do.
Yeah, sounds
Yeah,
good.
that's for sure. Yeah, you guys, yeah,
So
very.
are you part of any communities now?
Yeah, I mostly just do trading, cryptocurrency trading community called Safe Exchange.
Safe Exchange.
Yeah.
Bring them into the divvy. Okay. No, I mean, we get 10 communities working on some support. We all do 1/10 of the work.
Yeah,
And
so like before I go, I can give you yeah, I'm definitely gonna check out these things and see the conversations and if I get the feeling I will jump in. I'm not the type to hesitate. Um, though, so like just the 2 minutes on Save Exchange basically is I'm looking to make a decentralized exchange and basically connect. The reason decentralized is because it connects various blockchains so that you can do atomic transactions with various blockchains. And
I,
and my background is in, well, I'll tell you so you can know. My background is in stock trading and forex. So I bring that experience to the table where um, like building trading communities. So people who basically like to gamble on their speculations, right? And and I think that serves a very important purpose because periodically people hold the bag, and that keeps things moving. Transactions and volume does does good for markets because at some point someone you know wants to sell, and at some point later someone desperately wants to buy. So there needs to be intermediaries there, and if people are well informed by about the things that are going on, the various crypto coins and stuff like that, then like then those coins can have trading activity, and you get like a 30-minute, some person for 30 minutes holds the bag, and then some investor comes and picks up the bag off of that smaller trader. The trader makes their small amount of percent of profit, but that's exactly what trading is about, is someone facilitating the transfer at any given moment on some asset class of any kind. That's that's the goal of Safe Exchange, is basically liquidity and reliable exchange service. So yeah,
uh, I knew you were asking about coins earlier. I don't know if you can stay a minute longer.
yeah, sure. Yeah.
Um, we're basing the Divi dollar on the basic Ethereum coin,
Hmm.
and the intention is that uh, any the Divi compatible, every community that joins the Divi or whatever will can have a Divi compatible token, which they can use for whatever purpose they want, and we would, uh, you know, they would be compatible in the sense that the there could be very simple contracts for trading them.
Mm-hmm.
But we need, we want to, and on Ethereum, going back and forth with Ethereum, doing trading with Ethereum is very trivial. Now the Synereo AMP and Bitcoin, however, are another problem, and we actually do not, we want to, the Divi wants to isolate itself from real money to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to become a target if we can help it. We'd rather somebody like you stood out there as the big target, because once you get into that financial area,
Do you mean some exchange, bridges people to
yeah,
buy and sell the
right,
token?
right,
Yeah, I mean, sincerely, I'm like far away from releasing a product, and
yeah,
by far away, I mean greater than 3 months. So,
yeah. Well, we're not moving real fast now. There's a number of funding efforts
mhm.
under the way. In the meantime, we're pretty much depending upon community members and people that will work for Divvy dollars.
Right. Jim,
uh,
I need to mention that I'm not in a hurry.
yeah,
I plan to take, when I about 6 months ago, I was in a hurry, and after about 4 months, I decided and realized that there's no rush. We're in, we're before the internet was invented with these blockchains, and if we're going to be doing this for the next decade or two, then deployment in 6 months, 8 months is not far away from, it seems so far. And it seems like a lot of people doing a lot of things, and they are. But the world is so big that, the good word about the blockchain and, Satoshi Nakamoto and his creation has not been has not been has not fallen on the eardrums of countless people of this earth. So while it's a sure thing that we're moving along, I'm saying in general, Ethereum learning from mistakes, say exchange building, dollars getting divvied out, the rote calculus algorithms being figured out, and you pick the best format you want to go with, that it's happening. And 8 months, 1 year from now is not a very long. It's a long time, but it's not too long. It's on time, is what I'm trying to say. And when I think like this, I feel very confident in what I'm doing. And when I push the buttons to the keyboard, I know that the steps are happening. I don't feel like I'm falling behind, or I don't feel like something is not going right, or I'm not doing. I know I'm doing the right thing.
well,
That's
decentralized exchange is certainly something that's sorely needed. So we can.
yeah, and I think that there's not yet, and in my opinion, that like there's atomic transfers between blockchains and stuff like that, but that's slow. There's still not yet, like there's things like the Lightning Network. I think there's still not yet something there that will replace the likes of Poloniex or or these other regulated and and Mt. Gox potential exchanges, right? So um, yeah, I thought that I had it. I thought that I had a solution using MadeSafe, but then I look there and I just see that there's, like I said, like if 8 months from now that I'm promoting this exchange, then that would be extraordinarily good. Whereas, in the past I thought I had a solution using MadeSafe, but then I see that even that has a even more distant path. And then I realized that I'm closer by looking at the issue without considering some intermediary, where when I look at two coins and I want to swap them quickly or instantly, is more what I'm trying to say. Like, Omni has a decentralized exchange that takes 10 minutes per activity. So to cancel an order takes 10 minutes. And maybe that's just the way it's supposed to be for blockchain, for Bitcoin blockchain. And then you have, for example, BitShares they have a 6 seconds automatic exchange. Basically, it's basically automatic. And then if Ethereum goes down to Casper proof of stake, then they too will have a more instantaneous transfer. I think so. I think just there's also BitSquare. So I didn't try BitSquare, but I understand that they've achieved this atomic transfers between the blockchains. So I think that I think it's urgent, but I think that the solution has to just be correct, and I'm willing to bring that to the table.
Nice, nice.
Well, as ever, Daniel, my man, it's always good to speak to you. And yeah, as usual, we wouldn't many of the eloquent words you always say. They'd be pondering around my mind for a few days and man, and
Yeah.
yeah,
See you
as
later.
always, very wise. So very wise words, man. And like I say to you always, man, the universe has got our backs. Speak soon, bro.
Talk to you later. See you later, guys. See you later for sure. Bye.
Now, Jim, there's one question I have to ask you, and you sort of mentioned you've been around the sort of computers around for a great many years, and I speak as someone who's speaks as many people who are younger than me, but you're in that sort of same bracket as me. The one question I want to ask you, someone who's worked around computers for the amount of time you have, what's been the one development amongst the computer from where you started to where we are now that has surprised you the most? And where do you think this general development is going to go in the sort of like next 10, 15 years, regardless of where we think about what our own projects and stuff? I mean, where do you think this generally on a worldwide level it goes? And I mentioned this if you read a lot of, Elon Musk's and stuff, they have very great concerns and vivid concerns to them about how AI is going to rise and we're all just doomed. So on both of those ones, really, what was been the biggest sort of surprise to you in the development of the computers in the time you've been in them, and where do you sort of see this developing in the next 10 years?
Well, uh, mostly I've been surprised at how slow things have developed. uh, uh, I mean, it was a big step, when we had the old unit of record equipment, and I would program the payroll by taking this big pegboard, and I would wire, column one of the card to column one of the adder, and then column one of the total to the printer, and then I would take this big board and stick it in the machine, and it would run the payroll. Okay, and then we had, and then we had you know, lightning fast, 1 megahertz, 8K RAM, 1 MB disk machine that we ran a whole business on. And, it's, is less power than in your wristwatch. Of course, nobody has a wristwatch anymore, but I've been overly optimistic. I mean, when I built, soldered my memory boards and built my terminal to connect to my TV set back in 1978, and voila, I had a computer and, and the TV screen. I assumed it would be, 5 years before the TV and the computer would merge. They wouldn't be different anymore. And there's no technological reason why they weren't. Okay, it's all, for business reasons that they weren't. And even now, we got the smart TVs, there's still a distinction between the two for some reason. But the real, I think, my over optimism was, in some senses, the result of, what we were talking about here. The difficulty of what you're doing and me doing working together. Okay, everybody's working in a silo on their own stuff. And, this is, why I, went back for my computer science degree, is I thought, artificial intelligence was the answer. And when I got there, Murray Choroff, well, actually, I moved Murray Choroff in his office, but, he was saying, well, you can spend your whole life making one machine as smart as one person, or you can work on developing a collective intelligence of humans, and you'll have something much greater. And that pretty much set the course of my life. We did research on collective intelligence for 25 years there, and eventually lost funding. But and then I worked in the belly of the beast. I mean, I worked on trading for Bank of America investments, and at Barclays Capital, where the smallest customer was like $15 million, and I had to develop, equity arbitrage swaps that were illegal in the United States, but I could run them in France. Okay, who knows? But that was mainly what they were doing. They were hiding trades and running them wherever they were legal in the world. They were legal. Okay, and this is how they have their advantage over us. Okay, we don't have a chance. After that, after what I saw there, I figured we have no chance. But I was really excited when object-oriented programming, came out, and I kind of thought that was going to solve all the problems of the world. And then they made Java, which really sucks. And in fact, I wrote an article on object-oriented programming. But when you combine then functional programming, when Prolog came out with its and other things, it was exciting. It's harder to program, but interesting. And now, I see kind of the merging of the functional and the object paradigms, like in Scala, which is what Synereo is using. And this is where I see the hope today. And it's the right idea. Okay, it's the right idea, and it's sort of uh, why why I've been following Greg Meredith's work. I mean, initially, I'm an information physicist wannabe. Okay, I have informationphysics.com and other things that are sort of out of date, but um, following um, you know Mike Stye, who's a colleague of Greg, uh, you know, wrote an article a few years ago about the Rosetta Stone of computing, and uh, that got me involved with Mike Stay and Greg Meredith before their first crowd sale a few years ago, um, and so my ideas on physics and computing and numerology and uh, everything else, brain, sort of all came together. And uh, it uh, so this is a big thing, and I think very realize it yet. But I always it's like when uh, 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 I've always tried to do things way before their time. Like I was trying to take the old Palm Pilots they had and make iPhones out of them. Back long before there were iPhones. And people didn't understand why this was a good idea. I don't know. um, but uh, so uh, I'm hoping that this that we'll have something really good within a year on this. I could be wrong. I've certainly been wrong in the past in overestimating how fast things will happen. Uh, but uh, and I think that Ethereum even uh, 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 can uh, in a limited way um, make computing available uh, uh, to the individual in a community. Okay, and he was saying you always need a software engineer. I said, well, if we use a contract, we're not too worried about somebody exploiting it. Okay, but as with more and more people come into the picture, and they figure out what's going on because a lot of it's exposed on the blockchain. Um, it becomes more and more sensitive. And here again, I think the main thing is that we're building a system from as a tool for the human. And when we build this network of rote calculus machines, that's this great gigantic artificial intelligence, everybody will be accessing it on a level playing field. Okay, it won't be the powerful that are running this AI against us. Okay, together we can beat them. Okay, everybody will have a node running, and be part of the network and be profiting from the network as well as utilizing it.
Oh, I agree with you. And I mean, get my question to you again would be, I mean, do you feel in your circle that the people you communicate with, on however wide your network is, do you feel there's a general awakening of human beings? Because like you're very aware, and I'm a few years down this line of journey of what we call life, and you sort of think, okay, I know there's people out there with all the right intentions and, like you said, and the right thoughts and the right, are trying to do the right things, but it's gathering that momentum of people who can actually make these processes do. And it's something that me and Satori were talking about earlier on, about how you can, build these networks up. But from your experience, and from your life and the people you're meeting, do you feel that we're entering an enlightenment age, or do you think we're that this knowledge of, and this sort of almost the essence of collaboration is shrinking? Because you can argue it from both points of view. I mean, there's one point of view that says we live in a world full of trolls and preppers, and everybody's just putting up walls everywhere, and we're becoming less communicative as a species. And on the other side of the pendulum and the duality is the side that we've been discussing tonight. But I'm just, for someone who's, like me, who's been down the, this thing called life a few more years, compared to maybe what it was 20 years ago, or like you said, back in the day when you were in the 70s, do you think there's more of a human mind shift? Because to me, that's the most important thing. It's not so much about the technology, it's getting us as a human species to wake up to, like you said, understanding that we're all just in this collective consciousness, and we could use that. That's the key. But for that, we're going to need to have human beings waking up to the true potential of what they are. And it's something I'm fascinated to know whether you're in your circles, whether you think that awakening is happening, or is it behind schedule, ahead of, where on the curve of expectations do you think we are as a species right now?
Well, okay, we've, you know, many of the dreams we had as hippies have come true today. Okay, and that's great, but the cost, to me, is uh, very scary. I mean, in this politically correct world, we've lost freedom. Okay, and if, I'm going back to the 50s, really, when life for a white Anglo-Saxon in this country was almost utopic uh, compared to today. And I think I should sit on the other show. So I'm repeating myself, but I mean, even on a Sunday, you go into Harlem, and the blacks and their children were all dressed with suits and ties, and they looked proud and happy, and of course that all. So that I realize that the migrant farm workers and the less fortunate blacks and a lot of other people were suffering a lot of hardships, but uh, that hasn't changed. um, the uh, and we've become a consumerist society. You know, everybody getting prepared foods and latte coffees and constant advertising and just purchasing, 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 and this society couldn't exist unless we were generating a lot of garbage from all this uh, consumerism. It would collapse. Okay. Uh, um, so uh, I mean, it's a double-edged sword to some extent, and the trend away from um, individual freedom and the hippie do your own thing, man, that's groovy. You know, the trend away from that bothers me a lot. I mean, um, uh, you know, it, some people, uh, the Republicans think I'm a socialist, and the Democrats think I'm an anarchist or whatever. But it's like you can't. They've got us, divided. They've got a divide and conquer strategy against us, and it's been a long time since I could even get interested in an election anymore, because the campaign had nothing to do with the performance, and it was a rigged game to begin with. And I think it was when Jesse Ventura said, after he was governor or whatever, he said, it's just like professional wrestling. It's no different, you know. So, and the fact that so many people believe that, we have a democratic system that's working is troubling to me. And things like that. But the thing is, we've always had the power to get out from under the powers that be. Okay, it's a matter of personal choice. And Rush, when we had our chat the other week with Doug Rushkoff, he was saying our job is education. We have, people are programmed to think opposite of what we're trying to do. And, we have to onboard them into this culture. The simple thing we could do is to get out from under the money power is to just stop using their money. Right? If we stop using their money, they wouldn't have any power over us. Okay. But we got to play the game to win the game and to change the game. I really, the internet. I don't know if you watched that piece that Daniel passed around for Independence Day on the independence of cyberspace. It's wonderful. You've got to watch that video. It's a gem. But at the time when he said that, my reaction was like, well, that goes without saying. The internet is free. But look what happened.
Yeah, it's amazing how that we need that more now than when he first initially did it, John Perry Barlow. Yeah, oh man.
I told people, and I said this in one of the previous shows also, that someday the internet's going to be supported by advertising, just like television. And they thought I was the devil. They thought I was, oh, what do you mean? That's never going to happen. That's impossible.
Yeah.
And Milton Friedman, had his plan for people's money and even the minimum income. Okay, in a situation where it was the money wasn't controlled by credit from banks, but a reporter asked him. He said, "Do you think we'll ever see it?" He said, "No." But many years later, when I watched the video of that, and I was very active in the monetary reform camp, I gave up for many reasons. But and before he died, he predicted Bitcoin, and even that, it would be used by a criminal element, would be one of its properties. But he essentially was promoting this as sort of a solution for humanity. So maybe he was becoming hopeful when he realized that something like Bitcoin was inevitably going to happen. And I think this is a very big thing. And then Synereo is totally disintermediating media, providing rewards to the content providers and curators and participants, rather than Facebook or Microsoft or whoever. And I think that'll make a big change, okay, because we'll no longer have that top-down control where all the media is owned by like 3 companies that are all in the pockets of the obligatory. But so that will make a big difference. In terms of educating my own children about this, I haven't done a very good job. I mean, my father was very libertarian oriented. And I have that American spirit of individual freedom, and people talk about property being evil and owning property, and I sort of believe all religions. I'm not one religion or the other. I mean, I'm a Jew, a Muslim, a Hindu, a Sikh. I find that God reveals himself to all peoples in magnificent ways. And but as a Christian, giving up property or not having property is a morale that I hold. But on the other hand, every animal on this planet deserves a right to its share of the resources of this planet. Okay? Inalienably. And I'm for animal rights for people. Okay, we don't interfere with the animals in their habitats. And I don't think we should interfere with people in their habitats either. We don't want to enslave them. We don't want to tell them how to do things or whatever. If we want to evolve as a species, we have to maximize the diversity that we allow in the nature of human beings. And if we try to, the whole thing of trying to computerize the whole thing and plan it and everything else is just going to create a fragile structure that's going to break as soon as the environment changes at all, whatever. I mean, politically or any other way. I am, I'm very hopeful about the concepts and principles behind Synereo and my effort, which is free trust and the Divi. Free trust is building strong authentication and identity under personal control, which can be where you can sort of take your reputation and your identity with you anonymously by the intersection of our webs of trust. And the whole thing turns out to be fairly complicated, and people want simple answers. And there really aren't going to be simple answers. I mean, it's going to be a constant information war, and we are the militia in that war. And we have to, we're going to have to be, vigilant in uh, uh, yeah, in cooperatively maintaining our security and identity and our processes, um, uh, in a way that uh, uh, is reasonable. Okay, I mean the uh, there's part of the ethic here is you don't call a cop, you deal with the problem. Okay, and again, I go back to biblical law. Uh, and but of course, there's all kinds of biblical law. But
But before we sort of wrap this conversation up, I want to sort of like ask both you two separate questions, and the question I want to ask you, Jim, and I'll ask you first, and maybe you respond first to this, and then I'll ask sorry, and after Jim is finished, you can give me your answer. So the question I have to you, Jim, is what was the one bit of music, or the one album, or the one live act that you saw in music that kind of really kind of made you change your whole perspective on music and everything else? And I mentioned that in relation to you said about hippies. The one for you, Satori, I know this is a story that we've discussed on, and we spoke up on one of the podcasts earlier on. But for people who haven't listened to Life is People, I would love you to tell your story about your grandfather and the Adobe house. So those are the two sort of. So Satori, I'd love you to tell that story, but we'll start with Jim. I mean, like I say, well, tell me your sort of relation to music and what the band was or the music was that really kind of inspired you to sort of go down this path.
Probably there's two incidences that really stand out in my memory. Well, three actually. Two of them were Frank Zappa concerts. Okay. I mean, this music was just so awesome, like just raising you to the roof with this awesome sound, and and he would come out and he says, "You're groovy," and everybody would go wild, and and he would say all these, these awesome things, and the crowd would just go crazy, and then he would go, "You ain't gone nowhere," and just everybody would fall to the floor. It was like, but I mean, that was, that was a much more a musical experience. I think going to see the Dead was more of a social thing as much as anything else. But I guess different strokes for different folks, whatever. The second one was when I was up in Aspen, and see, was that when I was living in an igloo on top of a building, or when I was living under the Castle Creek Bridge? I'm not sure. But in any case, a whole bunch of guys got together, okay, for a party to bottle beer. So we got there, and there's garbage cans full of beer, and we're siphoning into bottles and capping them, and all the walls had shelves around them, and we were filling all the walls in the house with these beers that we were bottling. And it's like after an hour with like 10 people, we got the whole, we got all the walls, shelves on all the walls full of beer, and we emptied the 2 garbage cans worth of beer. And it was the house of one of the people in the something Philharmonic Jug Band. Okay, so then they passed around the instruments, and then we started to wail, and everybody was just really buzzing into it, with the, there was like the stick with the wash tub and the string bass that one guy was playing, and some people were on kazoos and violins and banjos and just everything, and these guys were good musicians. I mean, in the bands, the rest of us, just kind of caught the spirit from them, so that uh, it was just a really euphoric experience.
Nice. A little jealous of those experiences. But, so I guess going to my question. So for my dad's side of the family, they're from New Mexico, and so my great grandfather was building this house with his hands, and it's adobe. For people that don't know what adobe is, it's the red clay that's there in New Mexico, and so he was building the house, and my uncle, he was probably around like 3 or 4 years old, and my grandparents, and even they're from migrant farmer workers, and so they really didn't have much money, and so my uncle tells this story that he never had candy growing up, so they would just eat whatever food they'll give him, simple food, and that for whatever reason he tasted the adobe and it was sweet. So he was like, "Oh man, like this is candy." So he started eating the adobe, and so the next day, my great grandparents were saying like, "How are we gonna stop him from eating, literally eating the whole house?" And so there's like, you know what? We're gonna put chili inside the adobe. So and for those who don't know, New Mexico is famous for the chili, and they have really hot chili, and I'm really into cooking and especially New Mexico chili. But anyway, so they put the red chili powder in the adobe, and he went to go get it. He was running around playing, and then he went to go swipe the adobe house to put it in his mouth, and then, bam, his mouth was on fire, and then he was like tears. And after that, he never touched the adobe ever again. But it was just interesting because I have these experiences when I cook with my grandma and we do tortillas by hand. And I have a little farm. I mean, not a little farm, but a garden in my backyard where I grow chili and tomatoes. And my grandma's always really happy in a lot of sense when we do these different activities. Kind of going back to our roots and doing simple things. And Jim was mentioning earlier about having prepackaged stuff. And I get this a lot from my aunts and uncles, and even from my cousins. They don't fully understand. They're like, you could just go buy tortillas, and one, they don't taste the same. But two, it's not necessarily about making it easy, because it's easier just to go buy tortillas, and it takes a good amount of work to make tortillas by hand. But it's me and my grandma, when we make tortillas by hand. She's no longer my grandma. Her first name's Jacinta. She's just a person that we're working towards something together. And in that moment, we're kind of equals, even though I know we're not equals. And she tells the stories of my uncle, or her living on the farm, or how my great grandma, who actually, it's interesting. She tells the story that her grandparents used to tell her that sometimes, to make way for the new generation, the old generation has to go away, meaning sometimes family members die for the other ones to come in, kind of thing. And I was born, I think 2 days after, no, 2 days before or 2 days after my great grandma died. And my grandma only once mentioned the story to me, and she kind of mentioned it in that context. And it was really interesting to me later, as I grow older and contemplate things when I was younger, I never really paid attention to any of this kind of stuff. But as I try to find my place in the world and things get hectic and crazy, that I find some solace in doing these simple things and going back to my roots, going to New Mexico, making tortillas with my grandma, um, tending to my garden in the backyard with my tomatoes and making salsa. And she's always interested. She's like, "Oh man, like this comes full circle. Like we we had to do the farm and just to survive, and then how the family progressed past that, and that I'm taking it upon myself to kind of go, not to lose those traditions that we have that tie us to generations upon generations, and tie me back to the land. I think I kind of just started to like go so far out with all this prepackaged stuff to this kind of facade, and try to, and this happened with my own experiences of doing crazy things, of going to raves and going to San Francisco and doing different things, that I kind of wanted to go be more in touch with some real stuff. And we talked about this on Infinite Imaginarium, but that's what it symbolizes to me, to make these tortillas with my grandma, is to kind of have this time with her to talk, not about, just to have a one-to-one conversation, and we're doing work and we're making something, and that we have this kind of look that we have with each other when anybody in the family eats the tortillas and they're enjoying it, and we know that we did that with our hands, and that we put our love into it, and that's part of what life is about, that those little sparks, those little stories that we share. And that's just something that I always, I guess this is part of a reason too why I do some of the stuff I do, is because I like that aspect of let's say the Infinite Imaginarium, where we just kind of go in there and share our stories, and we realize that most of this stuff, these barriers that we feel, are artificial. They're not real barriers, that we opt into them, and that we're not. Yes, there's some differences, but there's a lot of connections and commonalities between us. The more and more we learn, and actually the differences is an opportunity, which I'm focusing more on, of where there's something new, novelties, some kind of intelligence that makes us all better when we start focusing on what we can learn from the differences of each other, and also making connections when there needs to be. Yeah, so that's basically the news, and what we say in the new Infinite Imaginarium, trying to build a new story for humanity, but it's much like the old story, and we're just making it in a different context.
Yeah, I saw an article
Well,
today on when society became, when humanity's society became chaotic, and there is a lot of this. We're moving forward by moving backward in a sense, and we're taking the best of what was before and the best of what we have now, and we're trying to integrate them together, and we can succeed. I mean, I in studying collaborate, in researching collaboration at NJIT for 25 years and collective intelligence, I've made many efforts in my life to form collaborations, and I guess WikiWorld has had a couple of in the late '90s, and then it had a big following, and then um, later in the 2000s, early 2000s, it had a great following. But I've always been trying to build communities, and finally, um, somebody who was one of the community leaders in pre-trust, which was only a few years ago I started that, and said, Jim, you're a lousy collaborator. And it took me a long time to understand what she meant by that. Because, I was more of the mind that nobody wants to collaborate. I mean, they talk the talk, but when it comes down to it, they want to do their own thing. Everybody's rowing their own direction. There's no, but, I was sort of blaming it on other people. I wasn't taking responsibility for being a bad collaborator because I wasn't getting these people rowing together. And um, to some extent, I had to realize that um, that I can't do it. I don't have the disposition. I mean, I have the wrong kind of brain ramage. I don't understand social situations. Um, at one point in business, they said, don't ever let Jim talk to customers. And it wasn't that I couldn't talk to them about technical problems, but I consistently would try to sell them what they needed rather than what they were willing to pay for. I just couldn't wrap my head around, oh, this is what the customer wants. Well, let's just do that. And if we do something else on the side that he needs, that's okay. Okay, you have to, change your thinking. And the latest problems with Synereo is you have a bunch of libertarians who are community leaders, and they want to do what they want to do, not what the customer, Synereo Ltd, wants to pay for. And that I had enough experience at this point that I could see that was happening, but and as much as I knew that I was the wrong person to take a leadership position in this Synereo community, I was I sort of became the de facto leader, but I failed in the sense that uh, uh, the uh, uh, the Synereo company is taking different directions now in terms of its support, rather than trusting in the community leaders to do what it wants. So it's sort of bypassing the community leaders at this point, and it's kind of trying to reform the community leader program that existed into what is it,
The amplifier program.
well, the amplifier program, yes, is one thing, but what was community leader program, I think, is going to be like some kind of mentor program or something. They're sort of like the uh, the wizards or something of Synereo, or they're they're not going. In other words, they're not going to have them be. Uh, uh, they're evolving the role so that they don't need any coordination or leadership. They can all act independently, and that's okay. uh, but I'm really excited that Daniel is on board. I think he uh, compliments me very well, and he has the sort of disposition that I think, he's more likely to is much more of a diplomat than I am. I'm sort of very very have a very Socratic nature. I mean, my father drummed science into me, and when somebody says something like the science is settled, my blood boils, because that's an oxymoron. Science is about questions. It's not about settling things. And 100 years from now, they'll be laughing at all the things we thought today. It's never been right before. It's not going to be right now. But I mean, even if I agree with it, I mean, I agree that we have to cut down CO2 and these other things for my own reasons. For the last 100,000 years, every time the Earth got this hot, we had an ice age, and we don't want to, we don't want to mess with Mother Nature. Period. But same thing with cigarette smoking. It's like I want to quit. I guess if I really wanted to, I would have quit. I quit for a month at the end of last year, and another month this year, and another couple of weeks here and there. But I haven't given it up yet. It's like both my wife and I get to the point where we feel so unmotivated that we go out and we get some more cigarettes. And if they're in the house, I'm going to smoke them. I think if she does stop, I mean, I certainly won't smoke. But it's very hard when they're right there to stay away from them. But the thing is, they have all this science that is totally bogus about cigarettes. And I'm not saying cigarettes aren't bad for you. They're definitely bad for you. Okay, but the bastardized science gets my goat. But the point I was making is that I disagree with everyone. I mean, I have my mentors, in science. I mean, John Wheeler is my idol. Okay, I got to see him a few times before he died. He told me to carry the torch. He really liked my ideas. But I disagree with him, about, consciousness causing events to happen, or human consciousness anyway, causing events to happen. Carver Mead, another great idol of mine. He's, if people would listen to him, okay, science would be so much better. I mean, he wrote, am I repeating this story? But, I guess the only one of my great idols in science is Luke Hoffman. And, well, a couple times, he would say something to me and I would reply to it, and he said, "You're not listening." But more recently, he's saying, "I agree with you completely," which is a great confirmation, so to speak, that at least somebody else knows what I'm talking about. And, it's like, my understanding of physics is pretty simple for someone who hasn't been trained that science builds on previous science. They don't understand that there's revolutions here. You get to a point where you've got to rebuild from the ground up to make sense of things. And, this is Carver Mead's thing. It's like, you're teaching classical science as if it was true, and then people get all confused and crazy with this quantum stuff. But if you started with deterministic quantum kinetics, okay, and showed how things like electromagnetism and gravity emerge from that, and there are no magical forces at a distance in this universe, okay, well, there's logical entanglement, which is something else, but that's logical, not physical. Okay, things are synchronized, so to speak, at a distance. But um, uh, so all that was just to say that I don't agree with anybody except maybe Luke Kaufman. I don't know. And so I'm a very disagreeable person. Okay, it's like in order to be a good collaborator to work with people, you got to agree with them. We got this guy Michael who's on the team, and he's just full of praise for everyone and how great they are, and you could see how how that works and how he gets people together. He might actually get some money for us. uh, but I'm not naturally that way. Okay, and I don't know when to keep my mouth shut. I don't follow Einstein's 3 laws of success. Okay, he was right about everything else, so he must be right about success too, right? He said every successful activity he's been involved with is a simple equation: A plus B plus C. A is diligence, hard work. B is frivolity, having fun. And C is keeping your mouth shut. And I always thought being honest was, just blurting out the truth. And it got me in so much trouble in my life, you can't believe it. But now I realize that you have to be responsible and you give people the information they need. Okay, if you give them too much information, you're just going to make a mess. You're going to confuse things. And I'm still not very good at that. I mean, even on this show, I disagreed with people and then thought later, why did I disagree with them? Did I have to do that? There's another way I could have done that, or a better way, but that's the way it is. Everything you do is wrong. Everything I do is wrong. Because afterwards, you can always think of something better you could have said or done. So we're always wrong. Um, but uh, so I'm hoping that we can get some people willing to collaborate. Okay, it's like the Divi is a no-brainer. Okay, it's all about autonomy and consensual collaboration. Okay, and when people try to make rules in it, like uh, I say, wait a minute, that's not what we're about. Okay, you have a team. They get together. We have 10 people that were interested in this project. Okay, they make their own rules in the team. Decentralized. We divvy up control. Okay, that's an important aspect. Yes, we divvy the work and the rewards, but we also decentralize the control um, uh, maximally down to individuals having contracts with each other. But the human being in control.
Well, as I said before, I mean, this has been a very insightful and inspiring conversation, and as we said at the beginning of this conversation, Satori, this is the very essence of what these conversations are about. We start off with one thing, and like you were just saying there, Jim, it's the element of just being around, having human contacts and having conversations and having these kind of discussions. And well, I think I want to thank you both for your time, because it's been a very enlightening conversation. I want to thank Daniel for coming on earlier on. And for me over here in Scotland, and I think you quite rightly there, Satori said it, completely right in the essence of your story, and all the things you were saying there, Jim. It's the very essence of what this is all about. Life is people, and with that, life is people.
Thank you for having